What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. So in this video, I want to talk about and get my thoughts and opinions on what former NBA player Kwame Brown has been saying as of recent, particularly in regards to lighter skinned black men and biracial men. You know. And before I really get into this video, one, I want to give a disclaimer, and that disclaimer is, if it doesn't apply, please just let it fly. All right. Because only a hit dog hollers, right? So if what I'm saying truly does not apply to you, please just let it fly, all right? Also, how I'll be, doing this video and going through this video is I'm going to play sort of like short clips of what Kwame Brown has said in regards to lighter skinned black men and sort of come through with my commentary, then play a clip, come through with my commentary about it, play a clip, come through with my commentary about it, etc. Right? So that's, for this video, that's how the structure is going to be. So before I get into the video, I just do want to, just give a couple of thoughts and opinions. So for one, in my personal experience, thankfully, overall, I've had pretty decent positive experiences with darker skinned black men, thankfully. And, not to say that I've never had like maybe a bad run-in here and there, but thankfully those weren't frequent, and I was able to just chop those up as just being isolated incidences, right? Within my personal experience, right? And I think because of that, I've been perhaps a little bit ignorant to perhaps what maybe other lighter skinned black men and biracial men perhaps have experienced, and perhaps their experiences were not so positive. Like for me, I've never experienced, being ganged up on by a group of darker skinned black men, or by a group of anybody really. Thankfully, but that's not everybody's experience. Some people have experienced that, and some people have even experienced violence coming after that. So I just bring that up to just tell you where I'm coming from, right? Kind of like a brief overview of my experience thus far in life. Just, let you know where I'm coming from. And also, another thing that has come up where it's like, lighter skinned black men should file colorism complaints, in so many words, not literally put like that, but in so many words, yes. And I think when it comes to that, like, do we really want to hear lighter skinned black men or darker skinned black men filing colorism complaints? Do we as a community really want to hear that? I feel like if the darker skinned black men did file those colorism complaints, they probably would get a lot more sympathy than the lighter skinned black men filing those colorism complaints. We love to coddle the darker skinned black men in this community. That's the sacred cow. They are the true chocolate beauties of the black community, as we all know that. But again, do you really want to hear dudes complain about colorism and hijacking the colorism conversation and the colorism movement, whatever you want to call it, discussions? Do you really want that? Probably not. Probably not, because that's probably what's going to happen, especially if the darker skinned dudes come through. Then this, boy, that's going to get hijacked real quick, right? And then you have to create an off movement for a colorism movement that you initially created for yourself, right? Also, personally, I think that a lot of the folks that are following Kwame kind of like fall into one of two categories. Black women, they're following him because they want a man. All right. And they think that Kwame gonna be their man. But now Kwame got other plans. He ain't trying to be your man. And the dudes that are following him, they want a daddy. You know, that's why they become following Kevin Samuels. That's their daddy too. That's their daddy. That's my daddy. But yeah, that's their dad. They looking for a new daddy now. Or another daddy, Kwame. And Kwame gonna be their daddy. And when it comes to the colorism complaints, let me jump right back to that for a quick sec. Also, you're probably not going to be hearing colorism complaints because a lot of these folks be engaging in colorism, really throughout the whole community, throughout all sides, be engaging in colorism. So you probably aren't going to be seeing folks filing colorism complaints if they're engaging in it, because it could be like, well, how are you going to file a colorism complaint when you engage in it and you perpetuating it? But people do that though. So I think I've mentioned all I have to say here, just about. Let me check to make sure, but I think that I have. Yeah. I guess one thing I can say, or another thing that I can say is like, I hear about like, oh, these dark skinned dudes are so masculine. And that's wonderful. That is great. But the black community as a whole seems to really be lacking in masculinity. I know that's not the best thing to admit or to say, but that is true. And I'm like, okay, great, awesome. Like, where is this strong, dark skinned black masculinity when we really need true masculine things to be done in the community? I don't really be seeing that. All right. And, black women's are some, these, black male identified black women, they're saying that Kwame is going to be bringing back black masculinity or masculinity. Or he's brought it back. Nah. Nah. Also, I guess another thing that I can say before I really get into these clips that Kwame, has provided us is I'll say that I'm not sure if dark skin or BBC is considered social capital. And if it is, I think it's really ranked really low as social capital. So as far as these dudes, coming through with their dark skin, that's great and that's wonderful, definitely. Not me, I don't got no issues or problems with folks, living while being dark skinned, whether male or female. I definitely encourage that. Live well while dark skinned, either male or female. But some of these dudes and some of the followers want to come through and just push as if they're getting so much, as if their dark skin translates into so much social capital, which I don't think it really does. Not nearly as much as it may seem. But maybe I could be wrong and be mistaken. Maybe. But even within like the dating market, I'm not even sure if that really truly translates all that much. Not trying to be shady, but just keeping it real. A lot of these dudes end up either being dumpster divers for other groups of people, going behind, the Chinese food restaurant dumpster diving for Kim Woo, or going behind the Mexican restaurant dumpster diving for Selena, going behind, the Italian restaurant dumpster diving for Rebecca with a little seasoning, a little spicy seasoning thrown in there. So they end up either becoming dumpster divers or either just have to have a lot of money, the money definitely helps to get like, decent quality non-black women. And even I would even argue some lighter skinned black women and biracial black women, or biracial women, I should say. But what do I know? I'm just a hating light-skinned beige and Negro. What do I know, right? What do I know? But what I do know is we're about to get into these clips. So here we go.
I don't know that Matt Barnes, but you could just look at his character and tell, like, we used to torture like that. You know it. We used to torture that wanted to be down and act black, make them crash dummies. He was a victim. That's why he's so angry.
So what's with the violence? Is it that serious? Are you that bothered? And also, oftentimes this violence does take place in groups. Let's not act like the darker skinned black men are giving lighter skinned black men fair fights. And that's something that really is never pointed out. Like, it's easy to be big and tough and bold when you're in a group, and it's a group versus one person. Let's be real. It's really easy to be big and bold. Now, on the other hand, if you're the person who is alone on their own and you are dealing with the group, it'll be a bit more difficult to be big and bold. It's not possible, or it's not impossible, I'll say, but it is more difficult to be big and bold when you're alone on your own. So are you really that big and tough alone on your own, when it's more like a one-on-one situation, right? And also that's how racism be working too. It's a team sport, and the more people you got on the team, the better chance you got of winning. Let's be real. Let's continue.
DJ Henry, he went you talking about you a light-skinned bitch too. I would have tore that finger wave up though. I would have just drugged you around. I really wouldn't have punched you like that. I would have just drugged that. I would have just fucked that finger wave up on some dark-skinned hate. I ain't gonna lie. Bruno Mars haircut. My darkness would have came out from all the years of being picked on from being dark. And you're right. I probably would have took out that toxic dark masculinity on your finger wave.
So I think that Kwame, I think that he has a certain space for lighter skinned black men where he expects them to stay. It's more like, stay in your lane, stay in your place type of mentality, right? So he wants the lighter skinned black men to stay in their lane and stay in their place, and like they shouldn't be stepping to him, right? How dare you step to him? How dare you have the audacity to step to him because he's dark? You should be intimidated. You should fear the darkness, right? Y'all know how that go. And that is a thing where I think, the darker skinned black men sometimes may want to try to live up to that stereotype and even embrace the stereotype of being super masculine, super, aggressive, roughneck, tough, whatever, right? And those things are associated with masculinity, whether it's toxic masculinity, whatever, those things are associated with masculinity. And he also goes on to say that he would have torn that finger wave up. Probably would have tore something else up too. I'll get into that a little bit later. But why is he mentioning hair? And he also later goes on to mention hair texture too. Why are we having conversations about hair and hair texture if Kwame is such a rough, tough jigger, right? And he also said he would have just drug Envy around. He wouldn't have punched him like that. He would have just messed up his hair, right? He would just play in his hair, right? they like some good hair. Them darker skinned dudes, they be going after that good hair. um, but seriously though, he did go on to mention like, oh, he would mess up his good hair on some dark skin hating ish. And I appreciate the honesty, in that. Where does the hating come from though? Where does that come from? Um, but he goes on to mention that, his darkness would have come out. Well, I'm thinking, well, your darkness is already out. We see that you're dark skinned. Like, all right. Like, I don't think it has to come out. It's already out. But I think he is associating, like, maybe darkness with, like, some sort of, like, aggressiveness, hostility, right? And he says that his darkness would have come out, from all the years of being picked on for being dark skinned. So is this where that's coming from, this animosity? Because, a lot of people do carry, trauma from their childhood into adulthood. And sometimes they may have to go into adulthood with that trauma and still continue into adulthood with the trauma until they have addressed the situation. Like the trauma from childhood doesn't necessarily just go away once you enter adulthood. It's often taken with the person into adulthood, right? So even though these darker skinned dudes are getting, hyped up, by the black male identified black women in the, what have you, the media, etc., right? Even still, they still are holding on to some childhood trauma that they just can't let go for some reason. And also, Kwame was born in 1982. He was born in the 80s. Kwame is an 80s baby, right? And when it comes to these colorism conversations, for some reason, that is the decade that just keeps on giving. Have you noticed that? I feel like a lot of these dudes who kind of be going through this stuff went through the 80s in some way. Not all of them, I'll say, but that does seem to be like a reoccurring theme, right? Where these dudes, they're from the 80s, or like they grew up in the 80s, I'll say. And, for some reason, that still lingers on. Notice, because the 80s is long gone. But, to be fair, the 80s was like a popping decade, I think. Like, I didn't really go up, come up in the 80s. Mine was more so the 90s, But, from what I've seen in, like, media and stuff, it seemed like it was like a popping decade. That was really cool. At least when it comes to, like, music and movies and things like that. The fashion was kind of interesting, but let me get back to topic though. So he talked about being picked on, as a kid for being darker skinned. But who picked on him though? Who was the people picking on him? If Was it lighter skinned men? Was it like, or lighter skinned boys? Was it lighter skinned girls? Was it darker skinned girls? Was it like just black folks in general? Like who? And he also says that he would have taken out his, quote unquote darker, dark skinned toxic masculinity out on Envy, DJ Envy. That's interesting. It's interesting that he says that it's toxic. I wonder what made him say that it's toxic masculinity or toxic dark skin masculinity. Right? Why isn't it could just be masculinity? But we in the colorism, color struck conversation. So that's how it goes. All right, so let's continue.
You can part my daughter hair and do that little comb over you had today. That was fly.
Notice again, Kwame mentions hair. DJ Envy's hair, and I'm not sure of how DJ Envy's hair looks at this point. I think he did get some hair plugs or something like that, or something, some sort of a cosmetic procedure done. But yeah, notice that like mentioning of the hair again. What's up with that? I wonder what are his feelings about different types of hair texture, especially when it comes to like the hair textures that black people have or that black people can have, you know, you know, because he's talking about hair texture or hair. Really, finger waves is like a combination of is like a hairstyle, but there's also a texture to finger waves. But yeah, I just wonder, his thoughts about hair texture. Let's continue.
I told you what we used to do like you back in the day, boy. And I was gonna show you. I was sure gonna relive my childhood on your. I told you, you might be thinking I'm playing. We used to do light skin like you, dirty boy. Call it color, real, call it whatever you want. We might have been a little jealous, but you got done dirty. You talking about, and every dark skin know what I'm talking about. Used to A-town stump like you, boy.
All right, so Kwame, he does acknowledge that colorism exists. He doesn't seem to really be too concerned about colorism like that. So I don't think Kwame is going to be a colorism savior for anybody other than, say, darker skinned black men. Just an FYI there. Also, you hear more about violence again, right? Perpetuating violence against lighter skinned black men, seemingly for just being born lighter skinned black men or perhaps biracial men. And that doesn't sound really healthy. That sounds like coming from a place of some sort of a sickness, an illness of some kind, mentally. He did mention that, quote unquote, like we might have been a little jealous. So I think this may be partially where this violence aspect is coming from, like jealousy. And also perhaps wanting to exert some sort of dominance too. I think that could be at play too, where it's like, these dudes, they want to dominate something. I have heard a story, or I heard a story rather, of like a lighter skinned black man being essentially attacked by multiple dark skinned men and his face like cut and slashed because he was getting a lot of attention from, the girls, women, whatever in the neighborhood. From the way that the story ended, I think the guy, the light skinned guy, is still getting that same attention, even with the cut up face. But yeah, it's terrible when the colorism takes a turn for violence, because is it really that serious? These dudes are sounding, at least these colorism dudes, the color struck dudes. This sounds like they would be considered, jealous, angry, bitter, This sounds like some jealous, angry, bitter stuff to me. But for some reason, folks ain't so quick to put that label on the darker skinned black man for some reason. It's like, well, it must come from like a legitimate place, It must be on some real-ish, you know what I mean? It can't be on some superficial stuff. Right, but a lot of times it is. Let's continue.
I told you what I was gonna do to you. Any with a finger wave, I'd have remembered my childhood, and I would have turned it to a hater. I'd have just that finger wave up. I would have had your ass up under that car, boy.
So yet more violence, yet again. And these are different videos. And these aren't just one continuous video that he did, like one continuous live stream or something like that. No, these are different videos. So yeah, more violence, yet again, directed towards lighter-skinned black men and biracial men for some reason. But he goes on to say that, he would have remembered his childhood and turned into a hater. So there is some, again, going back to the childhood trauma of being picked on for being darker skinned, and not wanting to find some sort of a healing or reconciliation with that. I'm not sure who was the culprit in that, in the bullying or the picking or whatever you want to call it. And he also said that he would have turned into a hater. And it sounds like he's been a hater. I don't think that's something that he's really had to turn into. I think he's been a hater. All right. But I guess maybe the hate would have just jumped out at that point, right? And again, more talk about hair, right? And again, these are different videos. These aren't just the same video, But again, more talk about hair for some reason. What's with that? You sound a little slightly obsessed with hair texture and hair. Let's continue.
Light skin like you with slick hair should be acting like Drake and take girls, but no, you getting your girl too, cause you want to be a thug.
So yet again, Kwame mentions hair. Some sort of a low-key fascination, infatuation with hair. I mean, he keeps mentioning it. He keeps bringing it up. This time he's talking about Matt Barnes' hair. And he also goes on to talk about the whole, he should just be, quote unquote, like Drake, and stealing other dudes' girls. Really? So it's basically like, you should just be, quote unquote, like a pretty playboy, but no, you want to be a thug. And he doesn't agree with that. He doesn't think that the lighter skinned black men and biracial men can be thugs. Oddly enough, he, delegates them to being, like, I guess, playboys, Casanovas, whatever you want to call it. Interesting. Let's continue. But before we continue, I do want to say that, that whole Playboy versus thug thing, it is a reflection of how I think Kwame views, again, light skin versus dark skin. Like, oh, darker skin is more, tough and rough and aggressive and, even hostile and violent even, right? And he views like the lighter skin as being more, I guess, softer, more like gentle, more smooth. Again, he is equating skin tones to people being, quote unquote, playboys, or Casanovas, or folks being thugs or gangsters. So I think that is interesting to note as well, because in these sort of things, folks do end up like low-key telling on themselves if you give them enough space and room to talk. They'll end up telling on themselves one point or another. And I know somebody would come through and be like, well, it's just jokes, it's not that serious, you're reading too much into it. And the thing is, yeah, these may be jokes, but, well, jokes do in order for jokes to make, to hit, quote unquote, they do have to come from a place of having some truth to it, right? Like when I make jokes about, the mammies, the pick-me, the mules, etc. Like those jokes hit because they do come from a place of truth. It may be kind of like an exaggeration, not in some cases, but it may be an exaggeration, right? But in order for the joke to, hit and to make sense and folks to get it and laugh and all that good stuff, it has to have some truth to it. Now, if I was making those same jokes about how, like, black men, like, oh, black men, they like they just be going on and on about they black queens and how they gonna march in this street and twerk for they black queens. It probably doesn't really make that much sense. Like, because it's not like that. So yeah, I guess that's just what I gotta say at this moment. So now let's continue.
What kind of are you, boy? Oh, I forgot. You one of them mixed, confused. I forgot. You always got to join the call. I want to be down for what you know is true. You light skinned always want to be down. Not all of you, some of you.
So Kwame mentions, being mixed and being confused. And the thing is with that, the biracials who are mixed and confused often have dark skin or darker skinned black men as their fathers and non-black women as their mothers. So that mixed confusion stuff, that's where we can push that and put that blame at. That pairing, that coupling, it doesn't seem to be the best pair when it comes to rearing biracial children. But, not all biracial children who have, black dads and non-black moms come out, mixed, confused, or whatever. But that does seem to be sort of like a common denominator or a reoccurring theme when you really start to do research. Right? And also, it looks like Kwame doesn't really like or appreciate, lighter skinned black men or biracial men who are on the pro-black train, who quote unquote want to be down. Shout out to Brandy for that bop there. I wonder if she's gonna get like a surge in downloads for that song now, since Kwame's saying it on his live stream there. But he does mention that, not all lighter skinned black men and biracial men do this, which I thought was interesting. So it does seem like maybe perhaps low key he may hold space for lighter skinned black men and biracial men within his life or within his circle, whatever you want to call it. Perhaps. He did make an effort right there to sort of make a differentiation there. So that's interesting. Let's continue.
Always want to be down. Always got to be proving something. Punk. You wasn't black enough and you wasn't white enough. You stuck in the middle. Stuck in the middle. Yeah. Told you about fucking with me, boy. And the more you keep running your mouth, Rico Suave, the more I'm a with you, Becky, with the good hair. Yeah.
So Kwame mentions, these light-skinned dudes, biracial dudes, always have to be quote-unquote proving something. I find that to be a little bit interesting. I mean, if you're dealing with certain behaviors that are being directed towards you, like violence, the threat of violence, accusations of not being black enough, then perhaps some of these dudes may feel the need to prove perhaps they're black and down and can throw down. Perhaps, You know, that's the thing. You know, um, and you know, he also goes on to mention quote unquote Rico Suave and Becky with the good hair. Right? These are his nicknames. You know, aka his pet names for Matt Barnes. Yet again, he mentions hair texture. He's mentioned hair texture quite a bit here. Notice that. You know, now he's all on his live streams, singing, you know, Brandy, I Want to Be Down and Stuck in the Middle. I'm not sure who that's by. At this point now, I'm just waiting for him to bust out singing, you know, That's My Type by Sweetie. You know, shout out to Sweetie. Um, Bit of a sidebar here, you know, when Sweetie broke up with Quavo, y'all know things went real left for Sweetie there. You know, when she, you know, left her, you know, her dark skin, um, Kang, right? Notice how folks kind of switched up on Sweetie, you know. Now, folks was low key coming after Sweetie before that, just because she was telling that, you know, the dudes got to buy Birkins, or you got to go send them back lurking. But when she broke up with Quavo, that's when folks really started coming for her. You know, they coming for their preferences now for some reason, right? And low key, that's what's gonna happen when or if Cardi B ever leaves Offset. So that's what I think part of the reason why she's still holding on for hope. Hold on to my black cane for hope. My name Cardi B. I hold on to my black cane for hope too. But back to topic though. So yeah, so he's singing, you know, Brandy, I Want to Be Down and Stuck in the Middle. And again, at this point now, I'm just waiting for him to just bust out and start singing, you know, My Type by Sweetie. You know, he just going on and on about this good hair, like like light skinned jigger with good hair. That's my type. That's my type. Get rough, mess the good hair up. Dark green eyes, thick in the thighs. That's my type. That's my type. Call light skinned babe Mr. Rico Suave. That's my type, nigga. That's my type. That's my type. That's my type. You know. So yeah, like a couple of people in like the comment section of the video that Chrissy did for about this situation mentioned something about, like, you know, low key like homoeroticism or some like homoerotic vibe, you know, being attached to this sort of like, not just Kwame, but definitely Kwame situation, but also in some other situations too. But I'll just keep it the Kwame situation. When it comes to like these colorism conversations, these, you know, folks coming and, you know, with colorism insults. Like I do, you know, it's interesting because, you know, these dudes who are color struck and, you know, very much malicious colorists, you know, often do equate light with feminine and dark with masculine. And if you are doing that, then you would maybe apt to look at someone who has, you know, light skin, light colored eyes, loosely textured hair as being attractive. You know, if those are the features that you look for, right? So, you know, in some ways, perhaps some of this, like, you know, animosity, some of this vitriol, some of this aggression may come from like a weird space of like a very low-key, latent homosexual attraction. So, you know, Kwame, he got to get his toxic femininity under control. Now, he was talking about his toxic dark skin masculinity. Now, he got to get his toxic femininity under control there. All right. But, that's a whole video in itself. That's something, a whole nother something right there. But let's continue.
He tried to use that little light skin so he could use his good skin on me. But that shit don't work. He ain't one of them light skin like Drake. He one of them fake tough light skin. You should have been a smooth just getting, but no, you one of them angry bird light skin. But boy, I'm one of them dog. I'm one of them dog. One of them Geechie that'll get you to shut your mouth. And I think I just proved that. Mama's cooking.
So Kwame introduces a new phrase called good skin. And he's saying that I believe Matt Barnes, they try to get Matt Barnes to use his quote unquote good skin on him. I'm not sure what that means. And he just says that he should have just been quote unquote a smooth in just getting kitty cat like Drake. And notice he kind of references Drake here in his rants like a few times. And that's interesting too. So I'm guessing Drake might be one of his interest here if you get my drift. All right. So we got Matt Barnes, that's Rico Suave, and Becky with the good hair. That's his pet names for him. Then DJ Envy. I don't think Biscuit Head DJ Envy really got like nicknames. So I think Matt Barnes may be ranking higher. Then you got Drake. Drake's been mentioned when it comes to like being smooth and getting girls and stuff like that. So yeah, that's some interesting stuff there. Let's see. And I guess that's pretty much all I got really to say. I think I've mentioned all that I have to mention throughout this video overall. I guess I can say a couple more things, yeah. One, I bet not, all right, I bet not see Kwame, stepping out on the scene with like some light-skinned woman, or mixed biracial woman. Nuh-uh, I don't want to see that, all right? Nuh-uh. And also, another thing I want to mention, as quiet as it's kept here, I think that, the darker skinned black men are great allies when it comes to lighter skinned and biracial men. I mean, simply for the fact that they create them, or help to create them, and help perpetuate the population of them. I mean, me personally, that's not my dynamic within my family. I don't come from like a dynamic of having a dark-skinned father, thankfully, thank God, or a non-black mom, thank God, or, a dark-skinned or darker-skinned black father, thank God, or a lighter-skinned black mom, thank God. Thankfully, that's not my the dynamics within my family and where I come from, right? Thank God, right? Who knows how I would have turned out and been. I probably would have been one of them mixed, confused folks and, color struck and all that stuff if that was, part of my family dynamic. Thankfully, it wasn't. But I've gone on for long enough. I don't want to go on for too long and take up too much of your time. I already took up enough of your time. Thanks a lot for watching this video, though. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section below. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.